Becky Wiglin. I'm curator of the National Balloon Museum, and I'm glad to have you all here. This man has got more stories than hens have teeth, and I'm going to give you a little background on him. The more I read, I thought, ooh, I'm impressed. This alone, it says, Don Caplan has been involved in the art of aerostation since 1968 when he purchased his first balloon from Don Picard, one of the inventors of modern-day ballooning. So you know he's been in it since the beginning. Since the balloons were, modern hot air balloons were only invented in 1960, so he was just a pup. And he is from this is Don Caplan. I guess I never told who you were. Oh, yeah, keep him in the dark, Anyway, he and his wife were, they're from St. Louis, and Nikki was the very first balloon pilot at all in Missouri, and then she was the very first woman pilot. And unfortunately, she's no longer with us, but when she was with us, she was such a mover and a shaker and a doer, and she started Park Forest races, and they both were very proficient in gas and hot air. When we had our gas races here at the Nationals in 1981, he and Nikki were here. And I was also reading about Mr. Kittinger. I'm not saying it right. But anyway, he was here too. So we had a lot of gas back then. So he's also a lifetime member of the BFA. Being from St. Louis, I think it's a law that you have to be a member of the Gateway Aerostatic Association. And he's a member of the Federation Aeronautique Internationale. That's important people from France. And he has the distinction of being the first American balloonist to fly in Japan. He's also the very first person silly enough to fly over a volcano in the Philippines. What were you doing there? And then, yeah, I think. He's flown in Korea, Taiwan, Israel, Germany, Spain, France, England. And if you've been through the ladies section, that lady, the bust of the lady is Nikki. And it looks just like Nikki. And she has a gas balloon and a hot air balloon, and those are her pins. And there's a good story, if you read how we happened to get it and how it happens to be there, and I'm sure he'll probably tell you about that. But up until a few years ago, he was living on a sailboat and flying balloons in Florida. And then he decided that he'd come home to St. Louis. Give it all up. What a guy. Age. So he said, you get to that age, and you just got to go do something else. So now he's having coffee with his cronies, and he's bored. So he's here, and he's going to tell us some good stories.
Okay, that's it. Close enough, anyhow. Well, we'll start where how this all began. My wife Nikki read an article in National Geographic magazine about a fellow by the name of Don Picard, who made and flew hot air balloons in Costa Mesa, California. And she said, that sounds like an interesting thing. Why don't you give that guy a call? And said, when you make your next business trip out there, maybe go visit him. So I did, and we bought one. And that was the beginning. So back in those days, it was not easy to find somebody to train you how to fly it. So she actually she logged a few hours in Albuquerque. Oh, she put it on the back of a trailer on the back of the car. And her and a physics teacher, I got to mention, that's right, she was a chemistry professor at the St. Louis College of Pharmacy. And that meant she had summers off. So she could get away, I couldn't. So we put it on a trailer in the back of the car. Her and the physics teacher went around the country finding people who would teach her to train her to fly that thing. So she logged a few hours in Albuquerque, a few in Los Angeles area, came back here and found a fellow in Peoria, Illinois. That fellow was Tom Gable, who later went on to be the first winner of the national championship here in Indianola. We were building a ski area at that time in Paramorecat State Park on the Illinois side of the river. And that was a great place to fly out of. And Tom used to come down from Peoria with his wife, and it was a great spot for them to stay in the state park. So that's where her training started, and she went through the normal 6 hours, 4 hours of solo, a check ride with the FAA, and she got a license that in those days you were everything. In just that short amount of time, that short amount of training, you were a commercial pilot, you were a private pilot, you were an instructor, you were the whole works. So, so she went through the whole thing, and then the one thing you had to do also, you had to get a check ride with the FAA. Now the FAA back in those days, most of them had never seen a balloon before. So she got all her hours. She called the FAA. They can't turn you down because that's the only place you can get a license. So anyhow, we called the FAA. They said, well, okay, where do you want us to go? We had them meet us out behind a mall called Chesterfield Mall that was half built at that time, had a lot of mowed grass, and we decided, okay, we'll take off from there. So the FAA man comes out, and Nicky inflates the balloon, gets it upright, it's all ready to go, and he says, okay, come on in, get in, we're ready to go. He said, no, that's not necessary. You've got your license. So it shows you that nobody was going to get in that thing from the FAA, but all she did is stand it up, and that's it, you got your license. So that was that one. Then from there, flying was rather primitive in those days. In other words, we had one of the gimmicks, we used to burn the balloon so much that in order not to look so bad for the public, instead of having these pieces of burnt fabric hanging down around the mouth, we took a scissors and we cut them out nice and even and square. And that way when the people would ask, what are those holes for? We said, oh no, those are not holes. Those are windows so we can see better. So you had to come up with something fast for whatever the public was saying. We didn't want to look too stupid, but we were, so there's not too much you can do about it. So we did a lot of dumb things, especially we didn't have any, yes, I'm ready to do that.
Every minute or so it's going to turn on the screensaver so at least it kept moving.
Oh, okay. So, well, that's Nicky, incidentally. And that's me in flight school, but not very long ago, maybe about 100 years. And that's with our first Picard that we're now learning how to fly it. Now, the one thing that you're going to see in a bit, back in the early days, we didn't have a fan. Didn't know what a fan was. In other words, we really got that thing, and here we are with a balloon without a fan. Now, there's techniques in inflating a balloon without a fan. Most of them are absolutely stupid, but we did them all. In other words, we got it done, but they were about dumb tricks, and that's all it amounts to. So you're going to see a couple of those right here. Oh, all right, there's, to let you know what the Picard balloon, that top was held in with 3 pieces of string, 3 strands of 10-pound string. You wanted to have a 30-pound pull. That you pulled and broke that string first, then you ripped the Velcro out, and that's how you opened up your top, and that was the rip in that particular balloon back in those days. It worked. Much as you may think, 3 pieces of string, my goodness, that's what's holding it in? Well, it did hold it in, unless you really pulled it and broke all the string real hard. Okay, now this one is where I usually ask people a question if they've ever heard of a certain expression. Anybody here has ever heard the expression, push the bubble to me? There's one. Okay, that's it. In other words, he's got to be almost as old as I am. Because you're talking about push the bubble to me meant that when you were inflating a balloon that you didn't have a fan, you actually were getting a few shots of hot air inside, and it kind of looked like this. And at that point, you holler to the guy in the back, push the bubble to me. He pushes the bubble you see there forward, and as it comes forward, gets close to the mouth, it opens the mouth up, hit the burner. Okay, then now it settles down, it gets like that again. Again, push the bubble to me. They push the bubble to you, opens up the mouth, give a shot with a burner. That's how we sort of milk it up without a fan. And again, kind of dumb, but it worked. So when that's all you had, that's nothing you can do. Now I'll give you a couple other things that we, Well, flapping is the number one way. Now, the one that really is a dumb one, let's see, I'll get the. I almost hate to show this one because this one was so. There it is. Now, that is really stupid. And incidentally, we did it anyhow. You don't know what to do. What can you do to me? Somebody came up with the idea. I don't even know whose it was. Take a couple broomsticks, paint them with asbestos paint to help hold the mouth open. All that did was that when that burner hit those sticks, I don't care how much asbestos paint you had on them, they started burning. You had to kick them out of the way and stomp the fire out, and then go on to do the next thing, whatever it was. So you see, the sticks were nothing we could particularly brag about. Okay, now this is the same thing that when we had whatever's left of the sticks, we used them to help hold the mouth open to go ahead and get the balloon inflated. Oh, there's back to the sticks again. Oh, no, this was a great invention. This was really, we called it a weed burner because you could use a weed burner that was sold in a regular propane store. It's something I almost would recommend on a windy day. It's a great gimmick. Now, that's actually a regular burner coil made by that guy standing next to me. He made that thing. That's Bruce Comstock, who won more national championships than anybody else. If you look at that wall, it's his picture that's on there more than anybody. He made that thing, and it really came in handy for an inflation when you didn't have a fan, because you could walk inside and aim it just about wherever you want to, and it reduced the amount of holes we were going to burn around the mouth of the balloon. It doesn't have to be that fancy one. You can go to a regular propane store and ask if you can buy a weed burner, and you take a little 5-gallon. Oh, now this one's a special one also. We called this guy the turkey. Now the turkey, got in the balloon, held the fabric up in the air like that. He was far enough back where he wasn't going to get cooked, but he was going to feel heat, because I did it a couple times myself, and believe me, I don't want to do it again. That was some extreme heat. I don't know what the temperature was. I would like to have measured it, but you're talking about some really hot in there. After it got a few shots in there, then he came running out. After he came out, then we went to that really should be I'm Not in Order, where I showed you the push the bubble to me. That's the next step from this. So you're milking the thing up, you finally get it inflated, and that's how that works. Okay, now after Nikki got her license, I'm bugging her to give me I want my training. I want to get my license. Now in those days, she only needed like 6 hours dual, 4 hours solo, and she got a license. She said no. She says, I don't feel I have the experience to train somebody else to fly a balloon. So, and when Nikki says no, she's not going to do it. She's not going to do it. So I had to wait till she got 40 hours before I could start my training. So there, I think then the next thing to do is talk about the world of a wife training a husband to fly a balloon. It's called a test of the marriage. And it was very definitely that. There's a couple of stories, examples that I could use that tells you what happened. One of them was, I'm flying, taking my lesson, and we're heading towards a pigsty. And she wants to land in front of the pigsty. So it's like, she says, okay, we're going to land over there. I'm flying it. She says, okay, rip out. I didn't do it. She says, rip out, damn it. I now ripped out. So I ripped out, and the balloon lands right, the basket hits right in the middle of the pigsty, in the pig trap. And it barely tilts over. Oh, I'm bracing myself inside the basket that I'm not being tilted over. She goes past her elbows into the pig trap. Now, she came out of that using language definitely not befitting a lady. And she said, why didn't you rip out when I told you the first time? In which I replied, I didn't think you really meant it. So that was one example. Now we have another one where we used to fly around a place called Lake St. Louis. And a nice place where water touch and goes. Now, I had never made a water touch and go. I'm still just a student. She had made a lot of them. So we're heading towards the lake. She says, okay, I'll take over. I said, no, this is mine. I want to do it. So, all right, so I'm now going to make the water touch and goes, and I'm heading towards a nice 70-foot tree. That means I got to burn to go over the tree before I get to the water. And I also got to get down pretty fast, because if I don't, I'm going to wind up at the houses on the other side of the lake. So I'm burning, but I'm still dropping because I haven't got much space to get down to touch the water. And I'm dropping and dropping and dropping. And somewhere in the middle of this drop, Nikki decides she's going to bend down and pick up her purse off the floor. Just in case I make too big of a splash, she don't want everything to get all wet. So as she's bending down to pick up her purse, I'm recognizing the fact that, I'm dropping a little faster than I have any business dropping. And I know I'm going to hit the water, and I'm going to hit the water hard. Now I got to decide, do I tell her before I hit the water that we're going to hit? Or do I wait till after I hit it? And I said, well, I think I'll save one getting hollered at. I'll wait till we hit the water. So as she's bending down, picking up the purse, that's when I hit the water. She goes all the way underwater, completely in the bending down position. She straightens up after we get out of the water, and she's spitting, that, then. Now this time she's using words that I don't think I've ever even heard before. So that was a couple examples of a wife training a husband. I don't know to this day, I think we're the only people in the world who's ever done that. I'm not such a thing to be a hero about, but I believe that is the first. And I don't know of any. I've asked, is there anybody else who a wife has ever trained a husband to fly a balloon? Anybody? You all know anybody? I did. Oh, you did? Oh, okay. Well, Well, okay. So then you know how it was. You ought to have a few stories. Oh yeah. So anyhow, the next thing we run into is I finally get trained, and from there the FAA then decided they're going to take some people who are experienced pilots and make them designees, and they will be the one that give you the check ride. And Nikki was one of the designees she was the designee for the state of Missouri. And a fellow by the name of Bob Esch was a designee for Illinois. And I thought, well, okay, we kind of flew together. And I thought, well, I think I want to pass that check ride the first time. So I did it with Bob Esch, the guy from Illinois right across the river. So that way I got to pass. I didn't have to worry about having to take it a second time. And then we had other I hate to be talking about dumb ones, but man, we surely had them. We discovered something about a fan, that we could have a fan made. And we bought a little hand cart, and we had a 3-horsepower motor and got a cage, and we bought a fan blade that came from the shop that made electric fans. Do you know what happens if you have an electric fan on a 3-horsepower motor? Those blades are going to come flying off there like you've never seen before. They break right off, and they'll go right through that cage, and this is with a crowd of people. And we had 3 of them. We had 3 of them made at this shop, and 3 of them almost broke to pieces at the same time. And those blades just went over the heads of the top of the people, missing all of them barely. I think we could have cut heads off with those blades flying out over the crowd. So that was one. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, well, now at this point, we'll talk about, I got a lot here where I don't have pictures. So I'm going to have to just, you'll have to hear the stories without pictures, but I got a lot of them that I do have pictures on. I think, as you know, is when you're flying balloons, you're not one who's going to be taking pictures all the time yourself. So it's got to be what other people do. So we wanted to have some events. And one of the first event that it really wasn't us that came up with this one. Frank Hoover out of Wichita, Kansas, said, well, why don't we call the Antique Automobile Club? We know those people really don't like to take their automobiles out, and they're very careful with them. They usually only take them out on a truck and just for display. Well, we explained to them that what we're going to do. We want an antique automobile as a chase. In other words, the hair balloon is going to take off. and the competitors will take off after him, and the hair balloon will land. Now, once the hair balloon lands, all the rest of the competitors can land. Now, the competitors land, and who should be there is his regular chase crew, because they now take over the rest of the deflation, pack it up, put it on a truck. Now, the one antique car is assigned to every balloon. From that point, the pilot runs to the antique car, climbs inside, and they take off. They're limited, they're not supposed to go over 30 miles an hour, and you let there be a trophy involved, those antique automobile owners, they could care less. All they know is they want that trophy. You're talking about everything they said that you're not supposed to do, they did them all. They cut through lawns. They went through hedges. One of them knocked over a fence. They wanted that trophy. So from there, I was the balloon meister of that particular one. And how the winner was going to be checking the desk in the motel where we were staying, the first one to do it. And the two vehicles who were first and second coming down the road was an antique Model A car, and the other one was a Model A truck. And Nicky was in the Model A truck. And both of them hit the motel grounds just about the same time. They both jump out. The guy's running for the door of the motel. Nicky's running for the guy. She gets there and she gives him a hip, and he goes flying down the grass, and she runs in, pushes the door open. She gets first place. So she was a competitor in every way possible. So everybody got a trophy. The pilot got a trophy. The antique automobile got a trophy. But that was a fun event. Then we had some things we'll call farm incidents. The one farm incident, it was a result of one more event that we had in Kansas. And this was an event where the principle was the same as I explained. Hair balloon takes off, competitors take off after him, and in each pilot's basket was a young kid. The hair balloon lands, all the other balloons now can land after he does. He comes down, and the young kid runs out, and he's the first one to touch the hair balloon basket as first place, second place, third. And the kids get trophies. So I think the pilots may have gotten trophies off over that, but we had enough. They were junky trophies. So, but nevertheless, we all had enough trophies of that type, so it didn't make any difference. Well, I have a situation that my kid passenger is not going to do well at all, because I'm looking at solid corn, nothing but a cornfield, not a place to land, to be nearly close to him, close to the hair at all. So there's an expression we used to use that if we have no choice, it's called buy the corn. So I decided I'm going to buy the corn because I want my kid to get a better score than, it wasn't mine, but whoever my passenger was. So I land right in the middle of the corn. He jumps out of the basket, runs to the hair balloon, and he wins. He gets first place. And about that time, the farmer comes around, and he's walking around the balloon that's in the corn, and I let him know very quickly that we're responsible for whatever damage we do, and you let me know, take a look at it, and we'll pay you for whatever that is. And he's walking around, he says, hand on his chin, he says, well, I'd say about $20. I said, $20 for that little basket? Well, that's going to be, so by the time we walk it out of here, it'll be that anyhow. So I said, okay, I stick my hand in my pocket, and I've only got $18 in my pocket. But he's a very easygoing, cordial guy. He accepts the $18. And now he's going to help us pack up. And this was in the middle, a hot Kansas day in the middle of a cornfield. You're talking about humid, hot, corn dust all over the place. And he's doing most all the work. He packs it up in the bag. We finally take it down on the pickup truck, which is on a levee ledge. Take the basket down there, get that through there, get that on there. So we get it loaded up, and he gets in his pickup truck, and he's going the other way. We head for where the road is. We get down the edge of the road, and there's another pickup truck sitting in the corner, and I stop to say hello, and the farmer says, did you do any damage to my corn? I said, what? He says, did you do any damage to my corn? I says, I just paid that guy $18 for whatever he did. He said, what guy? That one going the other way. So he got so upset. He says, that guy's not even from around here. I know him. Says he's from somewhere else, the next county or something like that. And he was so upset by the farmer that conned me out of the $18. He actually almost forgot about his car and could care less. And it was all that he cared about. That gives us a bad reputation. That's awful. That's terrible. He was typical Midwestern farmer values. And his values was that in his town area, one of the balloonists got conned out of $18. So he said, no, don't worry about it. We'll laugh about it when the time comes later on. Nothing to be concerned. So anyhow, I got the idea. I give him my card. And I tell him that you take a look tomorrow, if you want to, at your spot where the balloon was, where we packed it up. And if there's any damage to your car, you send me a letter, let me know. This was before the computers were that handy. And he says, I'll send you a check for whatever it is. Okay, so he still is so upset about the farmer that conned me out of the money, that's all he cares about. So anyhow, eventually, we leave. And I give him my card and tell him to, let me know. I get a letter about 3 weeks later. And in that letter is a check. It's a check for $15. He says, I'm not sure that's the right amount, but I tracked that guy down. And I got out of him $15. He said, maybe for some of the work he did, he kept $3. He said, I don't know, but I'm sending you that check for the $15. That's another example of Midwestern values, of the how when they don't want anybody else to be cheated out of anything, they make every effort possible. So that was that one, and it was something that, as a result of it, Nikki had a little balloon shop at that time where we sold balloons, trained people, commercials, and had knickknacks that were sold, and some of it she had a hand painting of a balloon flying over a cornfield that looked a little bit like it was that cornfield. So when we got back, we sent him that painting as commemorating the flight on his field. So from there, we had a few other things that happened. I guess I got to bring this one up. This was when I was I got my license. After she got her 40 hours, I got trained. That was done. Now the next thing was we had a few problems with the farmers. John's here. He's not playing golf. John's heard all these stories so many times. He didn't have to stay. He wanted to go play golf. So it was actually John that was like had a farmer that two of them came up, and the one guy's got a shotgun. And he's like pointing it at him. And the other guy says, that's my brother. He's crazy. Don't pay any attention to him. And John says, yeah, but he's the guy with the shotgun. So with that, he said, just don't pay attention. Well, anyhow, he got out of there. We all knew not to go back to that farm again with a crazy brother. But now there happens to be another farm that was known as the most #1 balloon hater in the entire county or the entire area. And most of the balloonists knew who he was. And it was the same guy, John, who was here. John and Jerry are flying together behind me. And I've got a passenger in the basket, and I land in this very lovely pasture. And this farmer comes out screaming his guts out. Have you got the nerve to trespass on my land here? You don't have the right to be here. And he's screaming something terrible. And I'm trying to settle him down. I used to be, back in those days, I was known as Mr. Silvertongue. And this is time that Silvertongue had to come to do what needed to be done. So I said, sir, you mean to tell me you don't want balloons landing on your farm? He said, no, never. I says, well, I'll tell you what I can do. I says, I'm probably the oldest, most established balloonist in this area, and I've got a lot of influence with the ballooning crowd here. Now, we've got a clubhouse that we keep a map and I can have your farm put on that map in red. That means it's a red zone, and all balloons will never, ever land here again. He said, you can really do that? I said, yes, sir, I sure can. He says, well, I would sure appreciate it. Well, he got to the point that he was like, taken care of. I gave him my card again. I says, if you have any problems with any of the balloons, you give me a call, and I'll make sure they'll be severely dealt with. So with this, he helps us pack it up. And Jerry and John, the two guys that are in another balloon, they're flying together that day. And they're flying behind me, and they see where I land. They know this farmer. They know that don't land in that farm. So they're like laughing, old silver tongue, let's see how he's going to get out of this one. And they see the farmer is smiling and helping me load the balloon on the truck. So he loads it on the truck, and they can't wait till we meet at the place where we usually have breakfast afterwards. They're sitting there, on pins and needles. How'd you do? What'd you say? How'd you do that? What'd you do? What'd you say to that guy? I said, I just told him that I'm one of the more established, older balloonists in this area, and I got a lot of influence over the other balloons. And if he don't want balloons to land in his farm, I'm going to have it put on a map in red. It's called a red zone, and all pilots will know balloons will never, ever land here again. And they said, you mean he believed that? Says he sure did. I said, oh, my God. So that wasn't the end of the story. About 2 weeks later, Nikki's got a student, a girl, that she's training to fly. And she's doing touch and goes. So here's a nice, lovely pasture, and she decides to land and do a touch and go there. So she stands, as you do with a normal touch and go, you stand there, chat about the flight for 4 or 5 minutes, and she sees this farmer coming towards her. And Nikki's been around long enough at that time that she can recognize the walk. He had that dum, dum, dum step that, that's not a happy farmer. She says, I better heat up a little bit and get off the ground just in case. And he just about gets to underneath her basket. He's got this card in his hand, and he's shaking. Mr. Caplan told me balloons would ever land here again. And she says, and all he's got to find out, this is Mrs. Caplan. She says, I think it's time I get the hell out of here. She hit that burner, took off as fast as and found a nice, safe place to land. So that was that one. So we had things of that type back in the early days. And this I think, well, now we got to go to the clicker. We got pictures. We'll start with this one here. Let's see. Okay, let's get out of here and we'll. Oh, this is still part of dumb inflations. There, we're off the ground. Back in the early days, the first few flights, we only tethered. We didn't free fly. I don't know how long we had the balloon before we were actually totally free flying. Well, I had a partner back in those days, and actually he never got a license either, but it was like he finally did. And he really didn't realize it. He was afraid. So finally we said, that's enough. He says, Dennis, you buy you out or you buy me out. We got to do something. We don't want to have a balloon and only tether. So, okay, he was very happy to get rid of it. So anyhow, we bought the balloon, and now we want to put it to use. So, this is one of we made a lot of commotion where that's the balloon flying the St. Louis Ambassador's banner, which we flew in the first event in Indianola here. But it's flying through the arch, and Nikki hit the arch. And we thought, oh boy, how much trouble is that going to be? It was no trouble at all. She had with her in the basket the director of the national parks, who was in charge of where the arch is located. And he said, when he heard they were going to start complaining about hitting the arch, he told the powers to be that, no, he authorized that flight to go through the arch because he wanted to do an inspection So that hitting the arch was an inspection. We had different ways we got out of things anyhow. So you had to be fast, and that was one of the ways of being fast. Oh, this is number 1. Now where am I? I don't want to start all over again. Oh, let's see. It's Crondelet Park promotion. Okay. Oh, this is another thing. Now that's Nikki inflating at a park in St. Louis, where we used to do promotions for the park itself. And if you see that fan laying on the other side, that's one of those fans that gets smoke out of a burning building. That's all we knew to use. We found that, we can use that. If you want to take about 3 days to fill up your balloon, that's a great fan to use. That's about it. That was really terrible. This was really before we made the one where the blades came flying off. You don't use an electric fan blade on a 3-horsepower motor. Okay, that's Nikki charting. And there she is with a little bit too much pilot on. She's turning that down. And again, there's a better shot of that fan back there. You've seen that kind of fan. You ever seen where that's to get smoke out of a building primarily. And it blows a little bit of air the opposite direction. But you better have a lot of time. Oh, okay. Now with this one, I got to tell this story before we get to this point. The other thing that I'll say, that Nikki was, the one thing that if there was ever a fame she had in ballooning, it was the fame of anything that happened to her, anything that she did. She wasn't going to be the macho type and hide it. Nikki wrote it up, so it wouldn't happen. The next guy would know better and wouldn't do it. This is a good example. This was a stage where I wasn't flying yet. She was doing a commercial for a bank who opened up a branch and tethered for about 30 minutes with the president of the bank and the vice president. Then she says, "You want to go for a free flight?" I said, "Sure, we'd love to." So they went for a free flight, and a little less than an hour, and she decides it's time to land. So she's coming down to a nice big lot, sort of in the middle of town, but it was a big, big empty lot. And I'm chasing her at the time with some other people, and she's burning. The balloon's not reacting at all. Now, this was wintertime. She had cold fuel, but no, we had that conquered. We had the blankets were around in those days, and we had the electric plug-in, and we warmed the tanks. They were warm. But there's one thing we did not know about, and we're never told, never trained, never any information about it, ever heard of it, that a half-full tank loses pressure also. So if you're coming down and you actually only have half-full tanks or quarter-full tanks, you're going to lose so much pressure that the balloon's not going to react, and it didn't. That's what this was. This is the result of it. It hit the wires. She bounced back off of it. A big spark. She had the 2 passengers get down inside the basket, hold onto the rope along the side, and don't touch anything metal. It slid on down, and this is the next one. We'll show you what we call, if you can walk away from them, you're doing all right. I dropped something. Oh, okay. There, she's walking away from it. Nobody got hurt. And the other thing that's the story after this is now we got to buy a new balloon. So we buy a used balloon for a while. We've got, that's in here somewhere. But the main thing is, this is the time that Tracy Barnes was just starting. Now that's another balloon that I bought. That was for me. That's a Picard again. But who was just starting business was Tracy Barnes. And that was the first new invention of so many things, it was ridiculous. It was something that you're talking about, it had a top called a parachute top. and you pulled it, and it came down in the middle. All the air went around the sides of it, and you could hold on to it, and you deflated. If you didn't like what was going, you let it go. It went pop back into place, and you went on flying on. It also had the other thing, it had a flexible burner that you could aim. Now that was like unbelievable. That's something we couldn't realize what that meant, to be able to aim the burner. See, in the old days, all those burners were fastened to the frame of the balloon. You had to fight to move it around a little bit, and you really couldn't do it. That's why we had so many holes in it all the time. We had to come up with that story after trimming those holes that, those are windows so we can see better. So anyhow, Tracy Barnes had a pretty good artist at that time. And also he came up with a deal he needed money to go into the business. And he said anybody who would advance him $1,000, he would make them a balloon for like a third what the price should be. So anyhow, and Nikki had a thing for unicorns. And she had the guy who was the artist design the unicorn balloon. So that's where this came about. And we were one of those pieces. But by the time they came up with the price, what this thing cost. Oh, excuse me. What it cost, it was like not any. The price of it wound up being like a $3,000 balloon. All that it cost. Not this one though. This one was $10,000. But anyhow, it's very understandable. That was the first balloon that was made with overlays, underlays, and paint. Now, the other thing about it that's kind of not really so and doesn't really mean anything, every once in a while you hear people arguing, who made the first special shaped balloon? And they would go from Mike Adams made the Kentucky Fried Chicken basket with the chicken in it. That was a special shape. And some will argue he made the first one. Then the next guy will say, no, Cameron's Levi's, that the one leg was you'd burn. And somebody was hearing this conversation, they're saying, no. Says the first special shaped balloon was yours. Says you had it. No, I never had a special shaped balloon. And what are you talking about? He says, well, take a look at the unicorn. See those turquoise things up on top? Now, how that was done, he sewed those on top of the balloon. Now, they hung there. And we said incidentally, the artist, his name was Potsy. And his name was Potts. They called him Potsy. That was a very fitting name for Potsy. So he says, what do you got? Those things are just hanging there on the outside. He said, I forgot to tell you, when you're cold inflating, you got to go inside with a cigarette. And you burn holes in those sections that have those turquoise in the balloon part itself. And if you do that, now when you fill it up with hot air, those cigarette holes go through the holes and they make shapes. Says that's the first special shaped balloon ever made. I said, well, okay, I really don't think so. I won't take credit for it, but still, okay, you want to call it that? I'll call it that. So this was the first of its type. Wrong place. Okay, this is just another shot of it from the lower angle. And there's another that had 3 dancing unicorns going around it, and it was very feminine. The unicorn had eyeshadow, and like you say, the long hair. So it was a very feminine unicorn. Okay, this is Nikki checking tab. Oh, this is somewhere. We had to earn a few bucks, so she wound up doing some modeling and using the balloon at the same time. So that all came in handy. Oh, this one now. Okay, now this is a little bit of a long story that started with the BFA here in Indianola, the headquarters here. The BFA headquarters got a letter from a guy in the Philippines. In fact, that guy right there on the right, talking like he's talking to me. He wanted to learn more about ballooning. Well, they knew that my occupation was an importer of athletic shoes. And one of the countries I went to was the Philippines. And somebody here knew that I went there. So they called Nikki and they said, when Don goes to the Philippines, could he give this guy a call and maybe get together with him? So all that they had was a letter here in Indianola. So I called him and we got together. And he was looking for a balloon to be promotional, or he was working for a resort. Well, when he heard the price, it's like, oh no, they didn't have any kind of money for that sort of thing. So that took care of that. So, but we became friends. And his family owned an island, and on that island was right next to another island called Taal Volcano Island. And there was a volcano on that island with a black sand beach. And we went to that island to lay around, play bridge. They did an interesting thing with it. They built a platform out from the rocks. And it came out about 20 feet, a wooden platform. And that's where we ate, slept, played bridge, laid around on the weekend, and that was it. It also had inside the rock mountain, they chiseled it out and put in a shower that was and a bathroom with tile walls. Beautifully done. It was so we really enjoyed going there a lot. Well, one of the things that what we would do is eat, sleep, play bridge, swim off the black sand beach, and tell balloon stories. And from there we sort of got the urge, looking at the Taal Volcano had 2 craters on it. One was dormant, that was totally dead. The other one was slightly smoking. So as we were talking about it, I got the urge that I'd like to fly over that volcano that's slightly smoking and see how much heat is coming out of that. It wouldn't be enough heat to give me any lift. So it kind of became an obsession after a while. I went back to the States, and from there I started calling some of the balloon manufacturers. I called Raven, I called Mike Adams, I didn't call Semco. They made a balloon I wasn't too crazy about. But anybody else, they were all satisfactory. Well, I talked to Mike Adams, and he says, yeah, I can make you something. It's got to be something that's big enough to take my weight, and it's also small enough to go in bags that I got to take this on an airplane. So he says, okay, so he can do it, and he makes me one. He was in Atlanta at that time. Now, I'm ready for a trip overseas, a normal business trip, and I'm going to take this balloon with me. So I go to Atlanta, and we going to test the balloon. We inflate it, and I hang below it in a parachute harness, and we discover that, okay, says, Mike, take a picture, a big one, a big 8x10. So he takes a picture because I got to have something to explain what's in these bags when I start going through customs. So that's going to be quite a problem if every place I got to pull the envelope out of the bag and spread 60 feet of it across the table while 250 people are standing in line waiting. I'm not going to gain a lot of friends that way. So anyhow, this is what we do. Now let's go over how we get into that. Oh, wait, this is the bad part about this. All right, I'm going to have to do something. I think I'm going to have to run through these real fast because the pictures is what I'm going to go through. We're going to do that, but we're going to come back to them. I'm going to go to the cartoons. This was done by a animator who worked for McDonnell Douglas. He read this story. I did it in Ballooning Magazine. The story is with pictures and everything. And the other thing that I got to brag about a little bit, the one thing I was terrible at, I could never write. I was a terrible writer. I couldn't write stories. I couldn't write a theme. I couldn't do book reports. I just was awful at being a writer. Well, I wrote this thing for the Ballooning Journal, and Nikki edited it, I'll admit that. And this is us putting the semen together. Okay, this was the first flight. We had almost no wind. I got out over the water, and it's like I wasn't moving. We'll get to that. Okay, that's taken off. And I want to get to the cartoons. Oh, no, this is another. There it is. Okay. This is like going through customs. And I've got, it says, taking a balloon through customs. Now, there's the customs man saying, what is this in his bag? So I pull out the picture and I show him the picture. And I discovered the secret to success. Tell him, I'm going to make a movie. Oh, you're going to make a movie? Yeah, I'm going to make a movie. Oh, okay, go ahead. Go right through customs, no trouble whatsoever. I did this with Taiwan, Korea, Hong Kong. No, I didn't do mainland China. Korea, and the Philippines. No trouble. Waved right through whatsoever, not looked at anything, as long as I told them I'm going to make a movie. So, okay, that worked well. Now let's see what some of the other pictures here. Now we get there, and we, using a field that got goats wandering around. So we got goat piles all over the place. So Benjamin has some of the crew take big leaves and lay it over the goat piles. That's what this guy, oh, now we get out, we get it inflated. I take off, and I've got a flame out. Now with the flame out, at this time, I don't remember real fast, where have I got the striker? I got it hanging from a belt loop on a leather thong, and I finally grab it, I'm striking, I'm dropping, and I'm saying, come on, baby, rise. It ain't going to do it. It's same like when I hit the water at the lake. I hit the water, and I go down underwater. Luckily, I'm underwater, and so let's do the next one. But the pilot light is not underwater. It didn't go out. It's still there. So I'm doing a little belly surfing, and that's what the cartoon he wrote. And now I'm using the burner, and I'm slowly climbing out. The burial captain, or the village mayor is like what he is, got all upset. This crazy American came to his village, killed himself, and now he's going to have to write all these reports. He's saying this to Benjamin's wife, Babes. And when he sees me coming up back out of the water again, he says, oh, well, I guess he got a little warm up there and decided to come down for a swim. So he was content with that story then. So that took care of there. Now we discover I forgot the drop line and left it in the hotel room. So with no drop line, I decided, okay, I'm going to use my leg as a drop line. I'll come down close. So those are our chase boats. The chase boats is called a banca. A banca is like a 30-foot canoe with outriggers on both sides. And that's Benjamin is like, I tell, okay, I'm going to come down low. You grab hold of my leg and slowly turn the banca towards shore. And they did, and all that accomplished, Benjamin comes flying out of the boat hanging onto my leg. And I say, let go. Well, he finally lets go, so he drops in the water. Well, I figure since I've been in the water myself one time, I may as well go ahead and do it again. We deflate the balloon over the water. I learned the secret for anybody who lands a balloon in the water. The secret is get any of the openings closed fast. Close the mouth of the balloon very fast. If you got a parachute top with a big hole in the top, close that fast. Anything that you do. Because when that water starts getting in between the two pieces of fabric, you're going to lose a balloon. That weight becomes so heavy and so extreme. I mean, I've heard many stories. Some of them went down, had a knife, cut the whole balloon in half in order to get it out of the water. A lot of them lost balloons. And really all it was, if you would have closed those openings, and that we learned that on this flight here. So now comes landing time. Landing time, it's like I start looking for the bancas. I don't see them. Uh-oh. And I'm looking at the white caps down at the on the water. And I says, man, that's blowing pretty good. So I've got a drop line with me this time. Oh, the first time I forgot a life preserver. This time I got a life preserver. Got all that nice safety stuff. And but I don't see any bancas. Off in the distance, I see an island. So I decide I'm going to go ahead and land on the upside, down up to that island, where the water is kind of shallow before you get to the main shore. And that way I can just walk on out of the place. walk on up to the island. So I get there and I completely blow the landing. My judgment over that water and looking at the bending coconut trees and banana trees, that I know that I'm going to be I'm going to hit the banana trees. I'm not going to get down in the water in time. So I got to hit the burner and I go over the banana trees on the edge of the island, and I'm seeing huts. I'm not seeing any people, but there's screaming coming from up there like crazy, coming out of those huts. Well, now I'm in real trouble because I don't want to land a balloon with the basket in the banana and coconut trees, more or less land one with my body being dragged through the coconut and banana trees. But, all right, so I come down real low over the trees, and I see a little clearing. And it looks about a 50-foot clearing, a bunch of trees, a bunch of bushes, and another 50 foot. So my intentions were to come down and take a look. So I'm coming down. I said, the heck with it, I'm coming in. My feet turn the ground. This is a pop-top balloon. Now, if y'all know what a top, they're not much of them around anymore. But this is one where the balloon all the material is gathered together at the top, and you have a pin that goes through it, and you pull this pin out, and the whole thing opens up. From the equator up, you got to shoot. That's it. Now, they do say it would deflate faster than any other top. And that's probably true, but it's not worth the hassle, and it's really, I think, a little dangerous. So, and it's hardly ever used today anywhere. But the pop-top, I let them talk me into doing it. Pop-top worked very fine, and I drug through the first 50 feet of field, got whopped through the bushes, whap, got drugged through the other 50 feet, and finally stopped when I wrapped around a banana tree. Well, this one, the first one up to me, a little lady that looked like she was Bloody Mary fresh out of the cast of South Pacific. She comes running up hollering. The only English she knew is from World War II. She's hollering, "You okay, Joe? You okay, Joe?" And I'm laying there and I said, "Yeah, I'm okay." And actually, I didn't have a scratch except a filthy, dirty jumpsuit. Now, you've seen this jumpsuit in color. You got to realize what it is. This was, if you remember in the Far East, they have these shops that will make you anything you want, and they do beautiful embroidery work. So I went there and I took a picture of the unicorn balloon, and I said, "Okay, can you make me this balloon? Let's use yellow and with a black stripe around the middle, and embroidery the unicorn balloon on the back of it also." So that's what this jumpsuit was, and I'm sadly wearing this jumpsuit that day. So anyhow, from here, there's one gentleman who spoke a little bit of English. So I said, I'm an American, the good guys. He says, "You took off from the USA?" I said, "Sure, anything they wanted to believe was all right with me. Stop screaming." So I'm trying to calm them down a little bit. And about that time, my crew comes walking through the jungle the other way. And they are so tickled to see me, they thought they're picking up a body. Because they saw the top come out of the balloon, and they thought I was still flying, and that I was dropping to the ground. But actually, my feet were on the ground. So they were tickled to death. They said, "Well, I'm tickled to see you, too, because I could use somebody who can speak Tagalog." Someone says, "Could you find out why they're screaming?" I'd like to get you a better picture of that jumpsuit. Oh no, this is Japan. Well, anyhow, you saw the shots of that jumpsuit. It was a loud, ostentatious, bright yellow with a black-white stripe around each arm and each leg, and a black-white stripe around the chest. And he says, "Well, you have to understand something." This is my friend Benjamin. He says, "This is a quiet fishing island, and these people have never seen a balloon before. And all that they know is they look out to sea, and they see this big, bright yellow ball with a black-white stripe around the middle, and a man hanging from that yellow ball, wearing a suit that matches the yellow ball. And he's got a silver tank hanging down below him that looks like a bomb, and they think he's a man from outer space, and he's come to bomb their village. and they were going to go capture him to take him into the burial captain. Well, they got him, and anyhow, so my friend Benjamin, no, these are Americans who do these crazy sort of things, and they all kind of understood, and that's it. So with that, we discover one of the crew is named Segundo, which that means exactly what it says. He's the second son, and he knows first thing you do is check the equipment. He knows the natives there on the island very well, and the burner's missing. Everything else, the tank's there, the harness is there, but the burner's gone. So he says, okay, he says, I'll go to the village and get it back. So we get in the banca, and probably one of the scariest things I had was the banca ride out of there. Those waves were so big and so heavy that it's like I'm going up in the air in that banca and diving down in the water, back up again. Well, anyhow, we get to shore, we get the balloon out, and we let it air out a little bit, get it drying, and here comes Segundo with the burner, holding it up in the air. He was in the second banca. So he's explaining that, well, they didn't feel, as you said, that you didn't say thank you right for them helping you haul the equipment out of the jungle. Now what that meant was I didn't pay him. I didn't think to pay him. So anyhow, Segundo had to pay him. It was 8 bottles of jungle gin and 2 packs of cigarettes. It cost a sum total of $2.50. So Segundo paid him, and he had to stay there to drink one of the bottles of jungle gin with him. So that was the end of that, and that all worked out all right. Now, as a result of that, let's see if we can find the picture with the girls in it. And it was to them, that was their Johnny Carson show. So here I'm a guest on the Johnny Carson show, and I'm with Miss Philippines, Miss Junior Philippines, Miss, I don't know, they had 4 different misses of different kinds, and that's who the girls are there anyhow. Then from there, that publicity, being on the Joe Q show, I now hear from the Philippine Air Force. They want me to come and demonstrate the balloon for Air Force Days. This was the days when the fuel crunch was going on. And they had a cocktail party before this thing. So I came my next trip, I brought the balloon again. And the Air Force was having a cocktail party, and I went to that. And the general was very concerned that he was going to be criticized for wasting fuel. This is when the fuel crunch was going on. So he says, I need a reason why we're over here. And I says, well, if you want to read the history, it says, balloons were used to observe enemy troop movements back in the Civil War. He says, oh, that's it, okay. He says, give me the public relations man. I want to call the press. I said, oh, no, man, don't say that, General. It's not that you're bringing me over here to test, to use balloons for enemy troop movements. Well, anyway, he said, no, that's it. I had the little article in the newspaper that how I was brought over there to see if they could test using balloons for enemy troop movements. So that again brought by a second event. Well, this was done at the same time that I did the Joe Q show. The second event was the Air Force wanted me to fly for Air Force Days. And that would be do nothing but take off, fly out over the bay, land in the water. They had all kinds of chase vehicles, survival stuff to pick me up real quick. So, okay, we're going to do this. And this is, a grandstand is there. And in the grandstand is Ismeldo and Fernando Marcos. So they're there. So I got to do a good job of this anyhow. I don't look bad. So, and Benjamin lets me know that he's not worried about the fuel this time. And the last time we flew, he was very concerned about the fuel because we got it from out in the country a little bit. It was but here, this is Manila gas. This has got to be good gas. Don't worry about this. This is going to be perfect. So, okay. So I start to inflate the balloon, and I get it upright. And now that I got it upright, I'm, wanting to take off and catch a little of that breeze is blowing me right out towards the bay. Would have been a nice landing in the water or pick up by a jillion survival people, frogmen and all kinds of stuff. So I'm burning. I can't get off the ground. And it's like this Manila gas, their normal fuel is called LPG, liquid petroleum gas. And that's what they use in cars, and for a lot of things. So you can't, liquid petroleum gas falls off where you can't get the pressure. You won't get 100 pounds. Well, there's no doubt I don't have 100 pounds of pressure with this good Manila gas. So I'm trying to, just get up a little, get me 10 feet off the ground, blow me out towards where the water is. I can't do it. I start jumping, trying to, get off the ground, start jumping. Well, on one of the jumps, I get about 20 feet off the ground. I get a little movement, and I land right on top of the Air Force truck that they brought the equipment out on the field. Put a big dent in the truck. I slide down the front of it, slide down the fender of it, and that's it. I got to call it. We're not going to do this. They all clapped like crazy, boy. They thought it was, great show, great show. So that was coming back the second time for Fernando and Esmeralda Marcos. Okay, I think this is, now we're going to get into okay. Now, again, on one of my trips, and there's a few pictures for this. This is flying in Japan. I used to stop off in Japan all the time, and I would visit with the balloonists. And what they always wanted me to bring was balloon junk. Pins, patches, any kind of thing you can think of. They didn't have that. So I bought all I could buy of balloon junk, and I brought it over. I met with about 5, 6 of the balloonists for lunch. And man, they all grabbed that up and bought everything I had. So every time I came over, I did that. So this one time, the number one balloonist in Korea was a fellow by the name of Sabu Ichiyoshi. Sabu has been in international competition with us many times for gas balloons primarily. He went to Germany and he got trained to fly a gas balloon, and he bought a hot air balloon that was a Cameron. So in the country of Japan, they had one type certified balloon, and that was that Cameron. So now, when they ask, well, which one would I like to fly? Well, when you see some of these, you'll understand I only want to fly that Cameron, because you're talking about balloons that look like they're put together with spit and glue. Now, the only one that wasn't, the envelopes were beautiful. They were fine. But the baskets and the burners were ridiculous. So let's look at here's these. You can almost tell it's a good-looking envelope. Oh, I forgot about Christine. Christine just passed away not too long ago. She's the wife of a fellow by the name of Brent Stockwell, who is a balloon school out in where the athletic A's are located, Anaheim, Anaheim, California. Yeah, he's got a school out there, and so she was trying to sell canned goods to Japan stores. Wasn't having much luck, but anyhow, when she called Sabu Ichiyoshi, when she found out I was there, and she knew this event was going on this weekend, she said, are you going to this event? I said, yeah, I'm going. So she says, well, if you go, I'll go. Well, this is in the wintertime. As you see, there's snow on the ground. And for clothing, I'll show you what I have. Well, that's me, and a little white nothing jacket. And that nice big heavy Pendleton sweater I had to be the gentleman, and I gave it to Christine to wear. And we're freezing our bippies. That's the trip, driving from Tokyo in a truck that they carried the balloon basket with the envelope inside the basket on the top of the truck. This wasn't a truck. This was a minivan type thing, very, very mini. And the whole thing had a giant dent in the top of that truck. The envelope was inside, and this was their transportation. They didn't have trailers. The only thing and they put the fan on the front bumper and tied it up there. And this was a trip it was only 110 miles to where we were going. The trip took us 11 hours. You're talking about bumper to bumper rush hour traffic, not quite all the way. This was the equinox, and it was the last holiday weekend in Japan. And these people, man, they celebrate holiday weekends like nobody's business. There was like bumper to bumper traffic all the way until we got to the ski area in Niba. So we stopped in the noodle shop, Chinese noodle shops, constantly stopping, eating. So it took us 11 hours to get there. So, what's going on here, incidentally? This is a Japanese tradition. You take a rice paste, and they put some kind of sugar with it, and that mallet, that's like a wooden sledgehammer, and part of the game is you're pounding on that ball of the rice, sweet rice patty stuff, and you keep mashing it. And a girl sits on the other side of it, and as you mash it, some splinters come off of that wooden mallet, hammer. And the splinters are in the ball that's going to make our sweet rice balls. Well, how it works is the girl, this is a tradition, pulls the splinters out of the rice ball. And he tells you, don't stop. Keep swinging at that thing. Keep hitting that rice ball. I said, no, I'm not going to do that when that girl's picking the splinters up. He says, don't worry about it. You'll never touch her. Well, he's right. She's so fast, it's like, pulling the thing's splinters out that you can bash that thing like crazy with that rice ball. And it was an interesting tradition. Then the other tradition they have is very similar to the USA. From there, we go to we go to their little clubhouse, and we're freezing to death, and we have the typical Kampai drinking party. In other words, what's in the sake in your drink, Kampai is a toast. And you get, the heavy drinking, then singing. So it's typical, it's a lot of fun. But the flight is a little bit interesting. That it's, I want to get back to the equipment, because the equipment you're going to see here is like a little nuts. A lot of baskets are made with pieces of angle iron. That's the sides and the bottom and the top and plywood. And they put a piece of banded metal around the angle iron and screw it on both sides of the plywood, on both sides, and that's it. That's the basket. I mean, you look at it, and that's scary looking. One of them is just about when Barnes came out with a flexible burner. And they saw pictures of it, but they didn't know what it was or how to make it. But they said, that's got to be one of the newest things around, and they're making it in the USA. So they had one balloon that had 4 springs going up to the burner, welded to the metal basket. You couldn't move it at all. There was not so in their eyes, they had this. They saw the springs. They made it with the springs, but they welded it to the metal. So anyhow, Japan is a very dedicated group. You'll see the work. Oh, the other odd thing that they do is they go ahead and they record everything about your flight. You're making the flight. They're going to give you a sheet as a souvenir of the flight. That's going to be how much fuel you used, how high you went, what the temperature was, all the details that you can think of. So they're very detail conscious, and that's me in that little white jacket, man, that was really freezing to death in it. But the needlework on the fabric was excellent. It's really the typical way that you did balloons in Japan was, say, 20 people got together and they built the balloon. And they didn't care that much about flying in it. What they wanted to do was to see their balloon fly, the balloon that built it. At the time, they had around 20 balloons in Japan. one type certified balloon, and the rest were all the home built. Well, that's why I was very anxious to fly that type certified one. I didn't want to fly one of their home builts. But it's just they're dedicated. Well, no, this is back then. I really shouldn't talk about today. No. Today the Japanese are as sophisticated pilots as you can be. The 2006 World Championships in Mildura, Australia, I was set up with the company in Venezuela that I trained the owner of the company to fly, and I asked him, I says, would you like to go to the World Championships? He says, sure. Well, there was a sum total of 3 balloons in Venezuela. He owned all 3 of them. And I says, now, and he was really the best pilot of the 3 that could fly the thing. And I said, well, we're going to have a national championship competition. And I got to make sure that the boss wins, who owns the winery, because none of the other people could afford to go over there to fly the equipment over. So we did, anyhow, and the boss won. I took him to David Levin out in Boulder, Colorado, because David, I think, has won more hot air and gas balloon national championships than anybody in the country. And he trained him for 4 days of how to win competition. And the main thing that he was trying to pound through his head, it says, when you drop your marker, bust your buns, anything possible to drop it on a road. Because you're going to score very well just because you don't have anything that's lost. And if it's lost, your score is 0. So Oscar got to be pretty good. Now, the one thing that I kind of hate to get into, Oscar almost didn't go anywhere without a girlfriend. And sure enough, his girlfriend he says one day, he says, oh, will you handle the propane thing for me? He says, I got to pick somebody up at the airport. Well, it's Oscar's girlfriend. Now, with the flights that you take, you have with you in the basket a pilot, the navigator, and a observer. And we had an observer, was a Scottish guy from Scotland. And he was, let you know that he was very, very strict, that he was going to follow the rules. And the rules were, at that time, the pilot doesn't have to be the one to throw the marker. Wrong. The pilot doesn't have to fly the balloon. The navigator, which is what I was, can fly the balloon. And the only thing of it is the registered chief pilot at PIC has to be the one to throw the marker. Okay, and you've got the observer in the basket. And he's also got his girlfriend, Rosie, in the basket. So the first flight, he's going to take some of his friends. And he's also got he's getting all his information from the Argentinians and the Brazilians. So he can speak Portuguese. There's not any trouble. So I try to tell him, look, the one thing you can do is you follow the people who have the best record in international competition. Follow the American balloon, follow the German balloon, follow the English balloon, follow the Japanese balloon. Those were the top competitors of that era. So comes time, he follows the Brazilian and Argentina. Well, 3 flights, there's 94 balloons in this, and we're in 94th place. So the last flight, he said, okay, Don, you fly it. We got a day that is like the most terrible winds I've ever found in my life. I mean, we're not only going to finish in the top 10, we're going to probably win this thing, maybe. So but remember, Oscar has to throw it. So I'm doing everything possible to use every bit of wind I can to get me over the target. The target is, no, they don't use X's. You use latitude, longitude, crossroads. That's your target. So you have to read the map as to where's the latitude, longitude, crossroads, and that's what you use. So anyhow, I'm working as hard as can be to steer that thing right over the target. And I'm going, and it looks like, man, I'm heading right for the crossroads. And I tell, okay, Oscar, take the baggie in your hand and get prepared to throw it. So he does, and he's standing there, and we're going to go head for right over dead center. I says, man, we may even win this thing instead of just being in the top 5 today. By the time we're approaching the target, Oscar takes the baggie and he hands it to his girlfriend. Here, you throw it, Rosie. What? How can you do that? I said, oh my God. Rosie's got the thing in her hand, and she's going, I said, throw the damn thing. She finally throws it 200 feet from the center, from the X, at the crossroads. 94th place again. So that took care of that. And that was my world championships that they finished. We only had 4 flights. The weather was pretty poor. And they had no choice. So, but he finished 94th. But look, he had a good time. But I was about to die. The Scottish observer who was going to be so tough, he was laughing so hard when he handed that thing to Rosie, and I'm like screaming, throw the damn thing, that I thought he was going to wet his pants. He was laughing that hard anyhow. So instead of and he didn't, I thought, all right, we're going to be disqualified anyhow. Why bother? We're still in last place, so we didn't even get disqualified for letting somebody else throw the marker. So anyhow, that's that. Let's get on and see what we've got for pictures here. It's still Japan. Oh, you can see those angle iron pieces that are the side of and that's plywood in the middle, plywood floors. And I didn't get a picture of the balloon with the 4 springs that were welded to the metal. That you couldn't move at all. But this was in the days when they only had one type certified balloon. Today the Japanese are very sophisticated, and they've got anything and everything. And like I said, they're one of the people that I would say recommended Oscar to fly with. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Well, that frame almost looks like a pretty good. Didn't somebody make a frame like that with burners in the middle of it? See, that it was a frame on the outside. It was not a. Anybody remember anything? Debbie? Did you remember something? Who? Oh, your 4th Cameron was made like, okay, well then that would have been copied because the type certified they had over there was a Cameron. So they would start copying parts off of that. So that's why I said that's familiar looking. Oh, wait a minute. Am I going backwards? No, I want to go forward. Oh, now this is something that Nikki made a showroom for balloons. And again, that was something that was never done before. And the guy who was a sales manager for Barnes wanted to have the sales meeting there to make everybody there to make a showroom for balloons. And that left wall is wallpaper. And it's a picture of a Albuquerque. I didn't even know that you could have wallpaper made from a picture. But she did. And that's a Albuquerque photo that's turned into wallpaper. And on the back wall, that's just cloud wallpaper with balloon cutouts pasted on it. So anyhow, the sales manager wanted all balloon ports to be made that way. Oh, this is an interesting one. When I traveled in Taiwan, I went through some of the villages that were, one of them was a wood carving village. You've seen all the wood carvings at restaurants, the dragons and that kind of wood carvings, and very elaborate wood carvings there. So I had a picture of the unicorn, and I told the guy who was, my interpreter, it says, when we go through that wood carving village, I want to stop at one of them And I had a big picture of the unicorn, an 8 by 10. And it says, the translator asked the guy, can he make me this in a wood carving? And he says, about how big? I said, oh, about so big, the high like this, this big around. He said, okay, you can make it. And I don't remember what the price, but it was crazy cheap for what it was. I mean, something like maybe $250. And I wasn't going to be able to pick it up until my next trip to Taiwan. So I go, and I'm very anxious. I want to see what this looks like. So this is the first, before we start doing any business places, I now go to the wood carving shop. And I want to pick up my wood carving. So I look like it, and it looks like this on one side. Turn around, look at the back. Perfectly smooth. It's balloon shape. It's got the round shape. Nothing on it whatsoever. No carving. I said, why didn't he do the backside? And he answers in Chinese, how do I know what's on the backside? I thought, okay. So I couldn't argue with him. So we had one that was smooth on the backside. So I said, well, can you do what's on the front all the way around? Oh, okay. So I think it cost me an extra $75 or $100 for him to do that, and wasn't able to pick it up for another year because I wasn't coming back that direction for that time. So I thought I'd bring that along because that was kind of an interesting thing. Now, things of that nature, I only have one son who has a balloon license. The other ones are not. Oh, this is sort of an interesting story. Yeah, let me go ahead and do this. All right. This is something that Nikki started races all over the place. She started the race in Forest Park in St. Louis, was still going on. That to this day, it is the biggest attended single event, one flight event in the world. They get like 125,000 people for this thing. Now, I wouldn't dare go to it anymore myself. I'm not going to fight that traffic. That's ridiculous. In the middle of Forest Park. And it went on it's still going on now. So that isn't about this thing here. What this is, something similar that you all would know about in the back. This is the the Civil Air Patrol. The Civil Air Patrol had in some states, the state of Illinois had a program that trained the cadets to solo a fixed-wing airplane or a glider. It was a summer, went on for 10 days. They stayed at the college dormitory. Like Simpson was one. It was Eastern Illinois University, the same college that Romo went to, who was the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. So anyhow, it was they trained him in airplanes and in gliders. Well, the guy who you all will know well was the president of the BFA at that time, was a member of the Civil Air Patrol. And he used to go there and spend his time, and he would actually take the big wheels for balloon rides. He would take all the colonels. He was a colonel himself. So Nicky was originally from Illinois, and so one day he corners Nicky and says, hey, you're from Illinois. How about coming to the flight encampment for the Civil Air Patrol and doing balloon rides for the colonels? And she says, no, I'm not doing any balloon rides for the colonels. He says, I don't care about doing that. He says, but I will do this. If you want to have a solo program for balloons, I'll get 3 other balloons and pilots, and we'll start a solo program for hot air balloons. Well, the guy she was talking to doing this was one who was scared to death that she wanted him to be part of that also. He was the president of the BFA at that time. And no, we didn't want him to be part of the training. So anyhow, she grabbed 3 people. One of them was me, and 2 other guys, to bring their balloon and take the chance of training Civil Air Patrol cadets between the ages of 14 and 18 years old. That's what this was for, designed for that, to solo a hot air balloon. And you had like 10 days, the same as your event here, 2 weekends and all week long. So it wound up being a pretty interesting flights. Now, I'll tell you our solo method. The solo method was really not exactly a legitimate solo method. That airport at Mattoon, Illinois, is a very, very large airport for the town, way out of line. I think somebody said they were hoping to have be an additional airport for Chicago. So the solo was like, we would take off, and the student would be in it solo, and we'd let him get about 50, 100 feet off the ground, and the instructor was in either an open convertible or a Jeep or whatever it was on the ground right underneath him. The instructor had a radio, the student had a radio, and you could hear the hollering all over the place, burn, 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 stop burning, stop burning. It was all the instruction. So this guy was 50 feet off the ground being hollered at. But as long as the program went on, everybody soloed. So it was only a solo program, no licensing, no nothing. And it was really quite a kick for those kids to be able to say they soloed a balloon. And they did. But it was just hovering 50 feet off the ground and staying there. When they started going too high, you hollered at them for that. When they started dropping too fast, you hollered at them for that. But it worked. So they just were being hollered at. Well, the other thing was kind of funny about, we have Civil Air Patrol radios were 2-meter FMs, a very excellent radio. And everybody had them at the encampment, all the fixed-wing people, glider people. Well, when the balloons were having a solo, they all turned on to that channel because they wanted to hear that screaming and hollering, burn, 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 stop burning, stop burning. So that was kind of a show we did for the rest of it. We didn't want to, but nevertheless, they didn't want to miss that. So that's one of the things. It actually was a very good, incidentally, the nice thing about that program, I went there. When Becky had the signing of the books, right before that, I went to Mattoon, Illinois, for that encampment. I found that they still got the program going on now. I couldn't believe it. Now, it's like so I did the speech to them while I was there anyhow. So they asked if I would. I said, yeah, sure. So I did. And I was like tickled to death, but I'll say this. Being as arthritic as I am, when I made that drive home all by myself, I thought, uh-oh, next time I'm not going anywhere and being the driver for over 200, 250 miles. So, like when I came here, I wasn't coming alone. So I learned a good lesson. Let's see what we got next. We may be getting close to the end. Oh, that's just me inflating a double burner. And what's the, oh, yeah, no, I got to know what this is. Okay. This is, that's the balloon that I had built for our purpose of flying over the pyramids in Chichen Itza, Mexico. Any of y'all familiar with the pyramids in Chichen Itza? They're the part of the Mayan people. Years ago built that's the shape of it, and I have 3 of those going around that balloon to represent that. Well, I used to go on a circuit in the summertime to make money. I did the circuit of where they took balloon rides, and I really enjoyed Canada a lot. I did the event in St. John's, Richelieu, which is south of Montreal. I did the event in the Toronto area. I did one in Cornwall area, and I did one in the Gatineau, Quebec, which is across the river from Ottawa, which is the capital. And I really had fun. I enjoyed them very much. In fact, the gal who does like the magazine for the Canadian organization, she took a couple of those stories that I've written, the Philippine story, and she put them in French and wrote them. And she did the Philippine story. She only used the cartoons, and she wrote them in French, and it was excellent. They were like, so also she wrote my Japanese story, and she wrote that in French. And one more. No, this one I didn't give it to her. Well, this one, in going to those events, the one at St. John's, Richelieu in Canada, I took 6 passengers each time. One of my passengers was a guy named Zozo, who was a Slovenian. Zozo Zalotnik or something like that. And he wanted to talk to me. He wanted to have dinner with me after the flight. And I was trying to get out of it. Okay. So I'm having dinner with the guy. And what he wants me to go to Cancun, Mexico with him to meet with two of his banker friends. They want to invest in a balloon business where in Cancun you land on the beach and you take off from the beach. And I said, no, Zozo. Balloons don't work that way. It says, you go wherever the wind takes you and you don't know. He said, well, okay. Would you come to Cancun just to look over it? Says the up on my traveler agency friend and two bankers would like to meet with you. I said, all right, I've never been to Cancun before. I'll make the trip. So I go, and the minute we get there, the first thing we do, we start going up and down, looking at the beautiful hotels on the beach and the different crowds of people. The beach is jam-packed, which he thinks I'm going to change my mind when I see all the money that can be made by flying from the beach and landing on the beach. So finally, I've got to put a stop to this conversation. I said, Zozo, let me explain how it would work. He says, you want to take passengers and take off from the beach and land on the beaches? I said, I can do it. And maybe about 65% of the time, I'll make that. But the other percentage of the time, if I'm on the land side and I'm flying in, and I got to land on the beach, I've got to go, and I'm heading for a nice 40-story hotel. He says, I got to burn to go over that hotel. Now, in order to land on the beach, I got to drop so fast that I'll probably only break the legs of maybe 2 of my 6 passengers. I says, then the other choice I have is I got to overfly it and fly out over the ocean. And flying out over the ocean, I said, we'll probably only lose 2 of the passengers who are poor swimmers. Well, with that, the bankers and the other ones said, okay, that's enough. We forget it. No more flying from the beach and taking off on the beach. So I got out of that. Well, anyhow, back at the hotel, I noticed that they have a kiosk that's selling bus tour rides to the Mayan ruins in Chichen Itza. I got to talking to the guy who sells it. I said, is this, how many people do you get to Cancun each year? He says, we get about 2 million. I says, how many attend the Mayan ruins tour? He says, about half of them, about 1 million. I said, okay, being my money-making self, I'm going to rent a car and I'm going to Chichen Itza. I want to see what that looks like. So I go. Well, to try to cut it short, anyhow, I finally get hold of the man who counts, and I'm getting the okay to do this, to fly over the Mayan ruins. And the balloon rides a lot of them are over something, over the vineyards in France, over the Napa Valley vineyards, over the Serengeti African deserts, and the animals. So I figure, over the Mayan ruins should be a pretty attractive thing, especially when you got 1 million people that's coming there every year. I checked the climate with weather. Everything looks good. I got the guy who owns the main hotel, owns the bus tour lines. He's making such a deal that he's taking all the discounts, and he don't want me to take any because he wants me to be successful. So, okay. Now, the one thing, I didn't mention I had some shoe business experience with Mexico and ran into a little corruption. So I thought I knew it pretty well, but I knew how to handle the corruption. Well, this one was like when NAFTA started. Remember NAFTA, the North American Trade Treaty? And I'm reading all that publicity about NAFTA, and I figured things have got to be most different. And I'm convinced that they are. So I now go ahead and I decide, now that I got all the best wishes of the guy who owns the land around there, I go ahead and decide that I'm going to have a balloon made. And I have this balloon made with the Mayan, I think we got another one. I'll show you that I put the name Mayan underneath a banner that's fitted to the balloon. No, that didn't want to work. Okay, that's going to run to gas balloons. We better get going because I got a couple gas balloon stories for you. Okay. anyhow, I got this balloon being made. And while it's being made, I have I have a raven also as well. I got I have a Picard, I got a raven, got a balloon works. So decided to take my van and a trailer and that raven, ship it on a boat over to Cancun. And I do. Somewhere along the line, there's some pictures of the raven flying over the Mayan ruins. So the first bit of corruption I run into, understand when you bring a balloon and a trailer and a van, all that into a country, and you're just going to be taking it out, there's no duty on it. I also learned that there's no registration fee in Mexico. There's no insurance for balloons in Mexico. There's no license for balloons in Mexico. I said, oh, this is like a nice deal. So anyhow, I get there with it, and I decide to do some test flights. I go over across from the hotel where I was living. There's a school grounds, and I take off from there. And the moment I take off, I got my number one guy, Mexican guy, is named Chino. He's the one that knows all about everything about the area. He runs the horse stables for the Mayaland Hotel. And he takes people on horseback to tour the Mayan ruins grounds. So he speaks perfect English. Well, in fact, he speaks 6 languages. But anyhow, that's I want to do a little crew training. I inflate the balloon, get it standing up, and I say to Chino, I said, you want to go for a free flight ride? Oh, yeah, man. So we take off. My first flight in the area where the Mayan ruins are. So I look down. Once I just barely get out of town, and I see nothing but cactus, solid cactus. And it's like, then a little bit distance farther, it's nothing but solid jungle that's not cactus. I thought, oh man, I don't know where I'm going to land this thing. So, nowhere do I have any kind. I land, I'm real low. I'm going to stay low in case I run into anything, I'll land quick. So I'm real low, and it's like, I see a little clearing. I get a little closer, and I see this is what used to be a cornfield. And all the corn is falling down and going. I thought, I'm coming into that thing, man. That's about the only clean landing I can make. So I come into that little cornfield, and I was depressed and dejected as kind of, how can I have a balloon ride business with all the cactus and the jungle and not a place to land? So I then now get to thinking, I says, it doesn't look so bad if I would fly into the town where the Mayan ruins are located. They've got farmland around it. They've got an airport that I can the airport's owned by the guy who owns the Mayaland Hotel. So I can land at the airport. I can land at the grounds at some of the hotels. So what we'll do is we'll fly into the town. And finding fields to inflate in, every Mayan village has a baseball field or a soccer field. So I've got places, I'm going to use the GPS, make a flight, determine the line. If the wind is that day, I go to this Mayan village or that Mayan village and heading right towards a place to land. So that sounds pretty good. I'm really in good shape. And I went ahead with everything. I went ahead and made the contract on that balloon. And I'm like, stuck with it. Well, while doing test flights, I got to tell you the corruption story. When I want to pick up the equipment of my Raven and van and everything, I got to sit there for about 7 hours. I'm with Chino. And we're sitting, nothing's happening. Finally, the boss man, he's reading the newspaper, says, come on in. I come in. We sit down, and the first thing he says, that'll be $350. I says, for what? He says, for service, for good service. I said, what if I don't care about good service? He says, oh, then I'll tell you how it'll work. You'll come by here every day for 60 days. And at the end of that time, you may or may not get your equipment. I say, oh. So you put your hand in your pocket, and you come out with $350, and you pay the man cash. I says, is there any receipt? No, no receipts. Okay, that's my first shot at corruption. Now, the next one that actually finishes the story, that the lawyer that I was using, who was corrupt as hell also, at the time I'm trying to open a bank account. And I finally get the paperwork done, and he tells me that he sends his assistant over to the hotel where I'm at, that you can now, you have a bank account. All right, so while that, I see in the file a letter from like the Mexican Department of Transportation, like the Mexican FAA. New rules for Mexico. Registration fee, $7,000 per balloon, plus $2,000 per month per balloon, plus $1,700 per month for their insurance fund. Not mine, theirs. So that's enough for me to say, I'm going. You know, there was I know they want to negotiate, but still, I'm not good enough to negotiate like that. And I know that who knows what they're going to want next time. So it's like, I tell the assistant lawyer who's like bringing me the bank documents, it says, tell your boss that I'll call him tomorrow. But I now see by the letter, he had this letter in the file for a month, and he doesn't say a word about it. Okay, that only proves the lawyer's a crook, you know, at the same time. He wants to collect for it and collect his bill, which was about 3-4 times what it should be. And that was enough for me to go back and pack my balloon, pack my trailer, pack my suitcase, get in my van, hook it on, and start driving, and then stop till I get out of Cancun, get the hell out of that country. So, and that you're talking about Cancun, if you look at a map, that's the tip that slips up here. You're talking about going all the way down and back, going all the way back up. I guess that trip is somewhere around 750 miles. And I don't want to stop till I got out of that country, because I didn't know whether there was going to be police on the border waiting for me or what. So that was that experience of the flight. And that was the end of that. Now here I got a balloon that's already cut. There it is, and that's what I used it to fly passenger rides in Miami, in Coconut Grove, in all the different places that I traveled in the summertime in Canada, in the USA, and it worked out very well, and I really had a lot of fun doing it. Well, at that time, I was living on a sailboat. I was living on a sailboat for 23 years and flying balloons, and I called myself semi-retired, and I said, that's the way to be semi-retired if you can get by with it. So let's see if I got some of that. I'll show you some of the semi-retired equipment to get, if you can. Well, that's the this is another stunt that was. Chauncey Dunn started a balloon club, and it was the purpose of buying a gas balloon. In those days, there almost were no gas balloons in the USA. This one was made in Germany. No. Austria, sorry, at the Factory Fabrik. And Chauncey Dunn went ahead and bought it, and he formed a balloon club. And everybody was supposed to put in, I don't know, $3,000 or something, and it was going to be okay to fly balloons. And you're going to be able to fly gas balloons. He still owned it. It made no difference, but so he was almost as good a rip-off artist as the Mexicans were. So anyhow, it was now the first Gordon Bennett was organized. That Gordon Bennett was organized by a fellow by the name of Tom Heinsheimer. Did a beautiful job. And we were to take off from the parking lot of the Queen Mary boat, which is in what's that town? Oh, it's one of the California border towns on the ocean. So that's where the event was going to be held. So you're seeing some pictures of, now who was going to fly this balloon? The real person who was supposed to come up was named Betty Pfister. Betty Pfister was part of the club. Oh, that club was Malcolm Forbes, it was Ben Abruzzo, it was Maxie Anderson, it was I don't know how many different people, but most all of them very, very wealthy. Except us, we weren't that wealthy. Nicky just wanted to fly gas balloons, that's all. So anyhow, we're a member. Well, the name who comes up that's supposed to fly is Betty Pfister, who's the wife of the guy who owns Aspen Mountain in Aspen, Colorado. So, but they browbeat her so badly. Oh, and this is one who enters international competition in flying helicopters. But they browbeat her so badly, talked her out of giving up her slot. Well, they never bothered to look that hard. They just figured it was going to be, the macho crowd was going to be, they wanted one of the guys to fly it. But what name is up next? The name of Nikki Caplan, that's up next. Cold day in hell, and she's going to pass up her, if it's her slot to fly, she's flying that balloon in the Gordon Bennett gas balloon race. Now, the balloon wasn't in the race because it was it's too big. It's 1,200 meters, and the limitation for Gordon Bennett is 1,000 meters. But this was going to be what they call the Pathfinder balloon. And they're trying to browbeat her not to give up her spot and let one of the men fly it. And she said, "Are you crazy?" I says, "I can fly a gas balloon better than any of the men you got here in this club." So they kind of like shut up, and that's it. And she was flying the gas balloon. Now, if you want to see some of the stunts that was pulled, I won't tell you who it was. You all know what a false lift is. This is the Queen Mary, and there's the balloon next to it. Now, okay, you see it's in the water. How'd that happen? It happened that a couple of our famous gas balloonists organized actually, they didn't mean to do any harm, but nevertheless, they're going to throw her up in the air. You take the basket, you got like 6, 8 guys around there as crew. Throw it up in the air. Well, you all know what false lift is. You do that, and that's false. You're creating false lift. So it went up in the air about 20 feet, went out over the water, and coming down. Well, there it is, coming down. Now, I really wasn't worried about any danger part because Nikki knew what it was to hit the water with a hot air balloon and, start burning. And you see they're throwing sand out of the basket there. And they threw enough sand out to get the weight, and they went back up again, and they had a nice flight. It wasn't bad at all. But still, the stupidity of some of our famous pilots who really, they've had some experience with gas balloons. 2 flights, that's all. So this is an example. Well, after this, Nikki bought her own gas balloon. And I said, let's see if I can real quick show you some pictures of that, and we'll wind this up. Actually, I don't know how that... Oh, that's her and her co-pilot, Jane Buckles. She flew with the same gal all the time. Now, there's one flight I would tell you if we had more time, because it's only about... it's sort of a... that's me flying her balloon. Because pretty soon... Oh, that's my balloon. I had one made by a guy who worked for Diversified Industries, making the blimps that you flew as over the coast that were looking for smugglers smuggling stuff into the USA. And I made him a deal. If he does the work on the balloon, I'll pay for the fabric and the materials. Now, I had a lot of extra stuff. The thing you got to understand, when it came down to balloons, anything that came out, Nikki wanted to buy it. Now, where she didn't care about any diamonds or any jewels or any of that kind of stuff, she wasn't going to buy balloon stuff. Well, you see, that basket that's in that balloon was when Ed Yost first started the balloon program. He made that basket, which is like about a 4.5 feet by 4.5 feet square. Those sandbags are like 75-pound sandbags. For women to reach over and pick up that sandbag, that's almost impossible, and putting it back in and put the sand in the hopper. So that was the sandbags. Then there was also, what else? Anyhow, let's say she wanted the stuff that Raven made a sandbag that you had a little piece of Velcro on it. You could pull the piece of Velcro and all the sand went out without you had to throw the whole bag away. So if you had an emergency, you throw the whole bag away. But you could pull this Velcro and all the sand's going. So you could walk around it and and just, get rid of everything. So with that left me with a basket, sandbags, those red ones, that was what to hold all the heavy sand. And what else did I get out of that? I can't remember something. So I thought, okay, if I can get this guy to make me an envelope and make me the load ring there and also a top vent to vent the gas, I can get myself a gas balloon. So I made him a deal that I would pay for the helium to take him for his couple rides, that he would get checked out in gas balloons. Today, he started his own gas balloon business. Went broke. And he wound up being taken over by, what's the guy who owns all the airlines from England? Branson. He took over the business. And Jim Theo works for that guy today. So he's still making blimps and things of that nature. And anyhow, that was the balloon he made for me. Now, do any of y'all want to stay a little longer for one last story? Okay. This story is one that was like a little bit of I'm not going to tell you one where there was a fatality at one of the events. You all from Wisconsin will know of which one, from the Abbey Lodge, fatality in there. Well, I was in that event. That was, again, talking about, I'll do this real quick, talking about the regulations of what it took to get a license was a little crazy when you see what this one was. And this was one that I think it was 4 or 5 airline pilots bought a balloon. And that was in the days when you're talking about 6 hours of dual or solo, you got a license. Well, 3 of them, one of them had like 12 hours, the other one had like 10 hours, and the third one had like 8 hours. And supposed to be the weatherman was the weatherman for the airlines that they flew for. They flew for not Northeast Airlines. It was based out of Chicago. North Central, that's it, okay. North Central Airlines. And this was sponsored by the Abbey Lodge, which is a very plush lodge. We were given everything. There was the meals were like king, wine, this, that, the whole works. And they got weathered out on the flights. And this one flight, we're told that, there's a front over Milwaukee, but it's stationary, it's not moving. So we'll be able to fly. Okay, so we all listen to him. And we get about 4 of the balloons inflated and taking off. The first one is the hair balloon. The second one is Nikki. The third one is me. And I think we get 5 balloons off, something like that. The fellow John O'Toole, who's out playing golf now, was here before. John was one of the other balloons that was in that, but he didn't get off. So we get off and we get if the guy would have paid attention to what to do, it's called, with this kind of weather, land and take off immediately. Land, if you're going to fly, fly for the crowd and put it down. So we take off, and all of a sudden we get hit with a black roll cloud. That thing put a dent into me that I felt like the fabric was hitting the other side. Well, it wasn't quite, but it was doggone close. Well, I knew as soon as that fabric came back, it hit the burner, because I'm going to be dropping like a rock. I did, and I recovered all right, and now it's pouring down rain, and the wind is blowing. I'm in a severe storm, and there's about 4 or 5 balloons up in the same stuff. So I come down, and I got a big cornfield. I said, I don't care how much of this corn I got to buy. I'm going to land in the corn, because that's going to slow me down. Well, I land in the corn, and I'm go through it, and it was almost like a fun landing. I had a 85-year-old man in the basket with me, but he was a very hardy guy. And actually, as we're landing, it was fun. I get down close over the corn. I rip out. I think I was flying a Picard with and it ripped out fine. And I'm going through the corn, clip, 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 and I'm saying, his name was Skip. I says, you holding in there, Skip? Yeah, I'm hanging in there, I'm hanging in there. Okay, we go all the way to the end of the field, and we finally stop. So with this now, I'm concerned about where's Nicky from the storm. So I have him go ahead and stay there on the, the farmer who comes out that I'm like talking about, letting him know I'm responsible. He says, oh no, don't worry about that. He says, we saw you come in and we're surprised you're alive. And with that, he also says, and on top of that, this corn's already been picked. This is a feed corn. And it's like, this is just the stalks haven't been taken out. Oh, very good. They were nice breaks for me. So with this, anyhow, now I was going to hitchhike to try to find out where are all the group of balloons. And I get picked up by a state patrol car. He sees me in a jumpsuit. It wasn't that yellow one. It was a more normal jumpsuit. He picks me up and he takes me over to where the balloons were. And we're talking about broken legs, destroyed balloons. Whatever the 4 or 5 was, they were all busted up. One of them, I've never seen a sight like that. One of them that hit the power line. No damage to him at all. He knocked down 3 telephone poles, or 3 power poles, laying on the ground with the wires still hooked to it. He was going that fast that he took it down. Now, so I'm worried. I'm trying to find Nicky. And they say, oh, Nicky and the hair balloon landed in the football field. Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. Well, now, all right, knowing that, I'm feeling a little better, so I want to go back to pack up my balloon where I've got it in that corn. So I go back, and it's the state patrolman gives me the ride back to that location. And on the way back, I'm hearing the radio, and I'm hearing I don't remember what the number was. Let's call it a 10-4. And the state patrolman says, uh-oh. I said, well, what's that? He said, there's been a fatality. I said, oh. Do you know who? No. What do you know about it? He said, well, the only thing we know is a woman. Okay, I have that kind of attitude. Nothing happens to me or mine. So I got it together a little bit, and we're heading to, we see another truck coming the other way, a balloon truck. And I asked the patrolman if he could wave the truck down. I want to join them. So I do. He waves them down, I join them. And they happen to be going to the hospital because they had a guy with a broken leg, a passenger, and they took him there, and they got to go pick him up. So we're heading for the hospital, and right as we stop in front of it, I tell them, so before we get out, what I got to tell you all, there's been a fatality. And all we know at this time is a woman. And they all gasped, and we went in. And as I'm in, they see my jumpsuit. There's another patrolman in there. And he's got a clipboard. He says, can you help me? I says, well, before I help you, tell me something. Do you have a name of the fatality? No. Do you have the number of the balloon? No. Do you know what kind of balloon it was? No. By that time, I look down at the clipboard, and I see the number of the balloon, the end number. I said, okay, now we can talk. Now, what that was a real proof of those hours should be changed for being training. The guy who had 8 hours, the lowest amount of any of them, was the one that was in this basket. He was flying the balloon with his wife in the basket. The other woman in the basket was the wife of the guy who had the 12 hours. Now, his claim was that the roll cloud hit him and drove him into the ground. And it knocked him and his wife out of the basket. The remaining woman went on and hit a tree, knocked her out of the basket. She fell to the ground and was killed instantly. Yet, until I got there and told them all. But it was again, it was quite an experience, and this again proves that 8 hours license is not for anybody, because this, if, anybody had any kind of experience, if you get hit with a roll cloud like that knocks that much hot air out of your balloon, recover as soon as you possibly can, because you're going to be dropping like a rock. Well, this guy just claims that it drove him into the ground, it knocked him and his wife out of it, and the remaining lady flew on and was killed. So that isn't exactly much fun. So really that's, oh damn, I need to quit this. This has really got I got one more that's a very hairy story in a gas balloon, but no fatality. They came out fine. This was an event in Colorado Springs. Well, it was my first flight in my gas balloon, that white one that you saw earlier. And nice weather, very calm, going nowhere. All of a sudden, we start seeing some black clouds in the sky. And I'm taking the fellow who built the balloon for me, Jim Thiel, who is in the balloon manufacturing business of the blimps today. So this is one of his check rides, and I'm seeing the black cloud, and I said, Jim, I don't care if we've ruined this brand new balloon. He says, I'm not going to get caught in that black cloud. It says, I'm landing. I don't care if we land in the forest, in the mountains, and it tears it to pieces. That's what we're going to do. Okay. He was with that. So anyhow, as I'm looking for the road, because if I'm going to land, I want to land where the road is. So the chance of getting picked up. So as I'm coming in towards the road, I see, I'll be damned, I'm going to get a clearing. There's about a 20-foot clearing right next to the road, and I'm heading for it. Well, as I'm coming in, as I'm not going to get the clearing. I'm going to get a nice 70-foot tree right next to the clearing. So I come in, I said, I don't care, I'm coming in. I hit that tree with the basket. It rolls, stops it, slows it down, rolls around a little bit, and right below me is the road. In the middle of the road is some car park guy looking up. And I holler, can you move your car? He moves the car. I drop like a rock right in the middle of the road. That was no skill whatsoever. That was just dumb luck. So with this, we were picked up real quick, but the chase crew was there. It's the only road going around the mountain, going up all the way. So the chase crew was there real quick. We got packed up. And with this, now I start talking to Nikki on the radio. And she says that the tower is telling her that the thunderstorms, the squall line is like south of, north of where she is. She's going to be south of it. They got her on the transponder. So anyhow, so she says, well, with that's what it is. I'm going to commit to go through the night. So she says, so I said, okay, we're going to join the other chase, the van that was chasing you. Now my chase van will now chase you also. So we're chasing her, and then after so much time, she says, I don't like the looks of the weather here. Says, go ahead and go down to Pueblo, Colorado. It's about 60 miles away. Says, they've got a weather station there, and see what you think. I want a direct reading of what you get. So I go down there. We have 3 vehicles. We've got another Civil Air Patrol guy who's a volunteer that's with us in a regular car, 2 vans and a car. And we go down to Pueblo, and the weather station's closed. So they got a telephone at the base of the tower, and I call the tower and tell them who we are. We're a group that's chasing one of the gas balloons, and we're a little concerned about weather. And he says, well, come on up. I said, well, there's 8 of us with all the vehicles. That's all right, don't worry, have them all come out. We've got 8 of them that go upstairs in the tower, the Pueblo Tower. So I'd never seen how the radar in a tower works. I realized it's circles of lines, and each one is 5 miles from one to the next to the next. And then you see the object is the balloon is 2 lines together, and they got her number above that line, N7NC, and 2 lines. Then the weather is a white blob. And we see the white blob is moving to the balloon. and we see the weather line. She's like 15 miles worth of two lines. She's 15 miles away, and she's 10 miles away, then she's 5. And tell the tower guy, says, tell her we think she ought to land. Comes back over the speaker. That's a hell of a lot easier said than done in the middle of the night without any moonlight. So I got to shut up from that point on. So the tower guy was smart. He wasn't going to say that. He was, the people here said you ought to land. Okay. So not a matter of 15 minutes later, she's totally engulfed by that blob. And so she says that I'm going to try to make a landing then with all that, but she's now caught in it. And so the tower, the guy says, usually airplanes lose communications in this severe of a storm. We found, I'll tell you later what happened real quick. She says, so they signed off at like midnight. So he's on the radio and says, he's telling me that we would stay on the radio with her if we knew that we could communicate, but there's going to be no communications. Well, he was wrong. She heard everything he said when he says, this is the Pueblo Tower, number so-and-so, and it's a 12 o'clock, our sign-off time. We'll be back on the air at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, and have a nice flight, and goodbye. And he's telling us that, he's not going to be able to communicate with her because of this weather. Well, she heard every word of that. And they were saying, how could they leave us here in the sky in this kind of condition? Well, they did. That's all. Not intentionally, because he was telling us he would stay on the air if it wasn't for that. Well, we'll give you two quick little what happened to the chase vehicles and what happened to her. Number one, she was taken by what we call a thundercloud. Now, you know what a hailstorm is. You know how what happens to the moisture drops in a hailstorm. It's taken up, sucked up in the middle, and comes out, if they get to be so heavy of a ball of ice or whatever it may be, and drops to the ground. We never knew. I talked to Picard and a few other people. Do we ever know of anybody being taken by a thundercloud and living? And the only thing Picard knew, what the hell was the name? One guy was, they know they were killed in one of the ancient gas balloon races. And other than that, they don't know. But there's ever been any that have lived through it being taken by a thundercloud. Okay, here's her story of what happens if you're taken by a thundercloud. The rate of climb was at 2,000 feet a minute. That's all the instrument reads. You can't go any higher. So 2,000 feet a minute, they're being sucked up into this thing, and it was rotating and spinning around to the extent that the force was throwing them to the bottom of the basket. And they're just holding on. And Nikki, all she's doing is wiping the rain off of the instrument. The rain is coming down so hard that that's a basket that should be leaking the water. It isn't leaking. It's coming so hard that it's now like up to their knees. It's probably what saved their life. In other words, that weight of that water knocked them out of the thundercloud. And they got knocked out, and they started coming down pretty fast at first. But it kept slowing, and closer they got to the ground, they were coming down at normal landing speed. They were coming down 150 feet a minute. It slowed to that. So they made a landing in a open field, one of the ranches down there, and started buckle down for the night. They made a, what? Yes, sir?
Do you remember what altitude they went to?
Oh, sure, because that's wrote on the barograph, 28,000 feet. No, now I know you think that that's where they breathe and suck on oxygen. They had oxygen. They put the oxygen thing, the gizmo on the tank, was going to tighten it, but too much was happening too fast. They didn't do it. And I know from airplanes that you can take a lot higher altitude they tell you that 12.5 in an airplane, that you can't go in beyond that. Yeah, you can, but don't stay there long. So that's sort of the secret of it. Like, you're not going to be killed. If you were there a long time, yes, you're in big trouble, even at 28,000. But if you're up for a quick shot up and a quick shot down, not so bad. So that was that part. Now, the descent was slowing to the point that landing was normal landing. And she made a normal landing. She didn't use her lights. She didn't use a lot of the stuff. What she used everything was with us finding her. We now decided that we're going to go a chase on our own before we called an emergency search and rescue with the Civil Air Patrol. And we got some Civil Air Patrol with us on top of it. So we leave the tower, and we start driving, and we get hit by this thundercloud. It wasn't a little bigger than golf balls, and it was so heavy that we had to pull off the road. We couldn't go anywhere. We had to pull off the road and wait. And it was Lindell and I was in his van. My chase crew and some of the other crowd was in Nikki's van. And it's like, we're like not talking, and what we should have been doing is praying. So finally it died down. And we now go ahead. The tower gave us a chart that where they were last located. So we went to that spot. It was, again, about 60 miles away. So after it all died down, we went to that spot and we started a chase. And we did it by taking the 3 vehicles we had, and each one getting they had a lot of roads here, like every 5 mile square was roads. Everyone would make a 5 mile square, the next one would make a 5 mile square, and the next one would make a 5 mile square. Well, I'm in the van with Lindell. That's the husband of the Nikki's co-pilot. And we're making the first 5 mile square. We get about halfway down it, we're saying on the radio, N7NC, come in, N7NC. Comes back, yeah, where in the hell are you? Man, that was a shot. So the wind-up was we picked him up. We used every light, every method, every piece of anything we had. The landing lights, we had a landing light, we used flashlights, we used flares for them to keep locating us. Well, we parked on the road, we walked over to where they were, and we decided, okay, we'll leave the equipment here till tomorrow, till daylight. And let's go back to a motel somewhere and get some rest, and we'll spend the night there. And that was it. So they lived through it. And I guess as far as we know today, that's the only experience of being taken by a thundercloud, and you can live through it. Not happily, but you can still do it. So that's about enough, I think, if we're wearing you all out.
So, are there any questions? From
Oh, yeah. You got anything?
Any questions?
What's the longest gas balloon flight you ever?
Oh, me? No, I'm not a long-distance flyer. In other words, it's like I've never done more than one overnight. All I can tell you that when I do one overnight, I'm like saying, come on, daylight, come on, baby. I want to land this thing and get the hell out of here. No, I'm not a long-distance. Nikki's a long-distance flyer. She did 76 hours one time. And she used to say, if you want to train to do a record in a gas balloon, take your balloon, put it in your garage, load it with all the equipment that you're going to take, all the food, everything about it, and turn the lights out, and go climb in the basket and live in it for 3 days and 3 nights with your basket in the garage. He says that's how to train for a gas balloon flight for long distance. So no, she had the wherewithal to do it, and so did Jane Buckles. The next flight they took, that's when she set the world's record. The 3 records that she set was right after the next flight after that.
What were the 3 records?
Huh?
What were the 3 records?
Oh, no, 16 records. It's the same, and it's not, don't be paying attention to the 16. It's one of those, if you set a record, you get all the records from the different size on way down. It's really only one record. But the FAA or whoever it is, the record company, gives you a 16 world records in every class of balloon that's under that.
That's kind of like how Tracy Barnes got his records. He set 1 record, and then he made 7, and then he made 11. And
Yeah, well, that's right. It is all one flight. So that's why we can say she set 16 world records. Well, that's really not correct. It's like we just soon not, but everybody else does it, so we call it 16 world record. Only one flight, that's all. Yes, sir.
I'd like to thank Don for signing me off on my solo
Oh,
in March of 1982. And he let me out, he hopped out of the basket on the sixth flight and said, go take it, Dave.
oh yeah, that's right. You were one of the 6 flight, right?
He thought an awful lot of
Yeah.
But I've been able to survive the 28 years since he signed me off as solo. So thank you, Don.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Caplan.
Thank you. I'm sorry for the extra. Not bad. 20 minutes overtime. I usually could do a lot better than that if I needed to be.